everyone, it's Kerry back with you today. What I have in front of me is our So Pretty collection, and I'm going to unbox it for you now and show you what's inside, and then I'm going to show you how to use some of the items that you'll find in this box. So let's begin. So when you open the box, all the goodies are wrapped in this lovely organza that has some flocked leaf pattern on there, and the piece is about 70 by 50 centimetres, so it's a good size piece. I have removed some of the items from their cellophane bag just so there's not as much noise and glare. So things like the lace and the seam and the sari silk will be in a separate cellophane bag. So you'll get 10 metres of lace. There's 10 different colours and types of lace, so you get 1 metre of each. And some of this lace is vintage and it was made in Japan and Denmark. There's also a small bag of this pearl bling string or trim, 3 different colours, and you get 50 centimetres of each. 4 metres of assorted cotton frizz and sari silk. These are some fabric flowers that are decorated with rhinestones, and some of them have little stamen in the middle. Now each pack will vary slightly, but essentially they're all the same. There's 60 metres of this jute twine, so you get 20 metres in each colour. There's a little package of vintage buttons in here, a couple of silver ones and then just some neutrals. There's also a couple of handmade items, just this one here with this lovely hat pin. And these have just been stapled on, so you can remove them and use them however you'd like. And then another little fabric cluster here on a little card. You get some chipboard pieces. There are 2 large dress forms and there are 5 smaller dress forms. You also get these 3 ruler pieces which have been laser engraved. There are 3 small tags that have a engraved stitching design around the edges. 3 of these little button cards that come with a matching stencil, and I'll show you how to use those in a moment. There's a lovely decoupage napkin with this beautiful dress form on the front here. There are 3 different stencils that have stitching designs on them. So this one has a straight stitch, like a dash. Then you get one that has a zigzag stitch. And then this one has little crosses. You also get a printed sheet from a digi that Renee has created, and I'll show you how to use these elements as well. So I'll show you the little button cards first. So it's just a chipboard piece. These little buttons have been held in with little tiny tabs remaining attached on the chipboard, and you can just twist them and pop them out, and then you can use the button as a button. There's a matching stencil that fits perfectly over the top of the buttons, so this will allow you to colour the buttons without colouring the surround. So if you wanted to just pop the buttons in a little pocket in your journal or whatever, then you can colour them up to match without colouring the background. So I'll quickly show you how to use that. Now I like to use a little bit of washi tape to adhere my stencil onto the card. Now this tape is actually pretty sticky, so I'm just going to run it on the back of my hand first so that it doesn't damage the chipboard when I take it off. And I line up the stencil on top of the card, and I'm just going to pop the tape over the edge and around to the back of the card on both sides. Oops. So that just means I don't actually have to hold the stencil in place. So I've just got a piece of scrap paper here, and I've just got a couple of colours of oxide ink. So I can just come over the top of the stencil with my stencil brush and apply some colour onto those buttons. Just for a little bit of variation, I'll use a second colour. There we go. And then you can leave it like that and you'll just have coloured buttons. Or you can also go ahead and add some stamping over the top. I've just got a very fine script stamp here. Just make sure it's up the right way. Yep. And I'm just going to stamp over the buttons so that I get a little bit of script on my buttons as well. So there we go. So then I can just peel my tape off. And you might want to, once you peel the tape off, you might want to wash your fingers before you touch the card, because if you have any leftover ink from the stencil on your fingers, it will transfer onto your card. So I'm just going to use a baby wipe to give my fingers a bit of a wipe. So then I've got my little button card there with my script stamping on my buttons. And just as before, you can just twist the buttons around and pop it out, and then that button can be used in your project. So some of the other items in the box are these little dress forms and these ruler pieces. Now these just snap apart when you get them into separate pieces. And just to give you an idea, here is the small set of dress forms, and I've gone ahead and just coloured the whole piece of chipboard using my stencil brushes, the same as I did with the buttons, and then I've just added some stamping over the top. Now once you've used all of the dress forms out of this piece of chipboard, you can still use this background piece by either carefully cutting between the dress forms and using the negative, or you could just use it as a whole piece on top of another page or somewhere else in your journal, just as another decorative piece. But this was a tag that I created using one of the dress forms that I popped out from here. And here is one of the tape measures, which I just scrunged up by rubbing some ink over the top. I've just layered it all up onto a tag and then popped a little tassel in the top here. So that just gives you an example of what you might do with these chipboard pieces. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 stencils in the box, and I'll just give you a quick look at the impression that you get from the stencils. Just use the same colour that I used before for the buttons. So this is the dashed line. So it gives this sort of stitched dashed line look. The next one are these little cross stitches. And I'm just using a stencil brush to be able to get into the fine details. So that gives you these little crosses. And then the third one is a zigzag. And that gives you this sort of look. You can of course use them in conjunction with each other to get some interesting impressions. Just adding a bit of zigzag next to that cross stitch, and then we might go in with the dashed line. So you can use them in conjunction with each other or just on their own. And the last thing I wanted to do is explain this digi to you, because it might look a little bit strange the way that it's laid out, but it's been designed like this on purpose. So to begin with, I'm just going to cut out one of these bobbins with the box that's attached to the bottom of it and explain that one. So it's been designed so that if you want to make this bobbin double-sided, you can. To do that, you're going to place your ruler along the bottom edge of the bobbin and then crease up against the edge of the ruler, so that when you fold this over, you only need to fussy cut around the edge of the bobbin once, rather than try to fussy cut 2 bobbins and get them matched up. So now that I have this folded over, I can go ahead and cut around the edge of this bobbin and it will be double-sided. So that now that I've fussy cut around my bobbin, it matches on both sides. I just need to glue my bobbin together and ink around the edges, and there won't be any areas where it doesn't match. Here's one that I made earlier where I've just popped a bit of ink around the edges. I've used some of the elements from the sheet to add a little label here, and that's ready to pop into a pocket on my journal. So I've cut these 2 elements from the sheet now. I'll come back and show you this one in a moment. This one here is designed again to be folded in half. And then you can just go ahead and cut it out. And once that's folded in half, it's just like a little label topper that you might want to pop on something like this, like a little fabric sampler, where I've basically just folded my topper, wedged some fabric in between, glued it down, and then used some of these other elements to stick onto my fabric sampler. Another way that you could use these is to cut these apart and have them as 2 separate labels. You might want to then come in and take this card off the bottom of the label, off the bottom of the bobbin, and then you can use this as a separate label to pop on top. Trim the edges down to size. So then you could make a separate little label like this to pop into your journal that just has a decorative backing here made from the journaling card element. So I hope you enjoyed that little look at our So Pretty collection. We have added the ruler pieces and a variety of other stitch stencils and button cards to the shop, and a lot of these other elements like lace, sari silk and cotton frizz are all available separately. I will pop a link in the description box below to where you can find these items in the shop. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next time. Bye!